Hi, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank each and every one of you for agreeing to be on my Capstone committee. I really value each of your opinions and your art expertise, as well as your educational expertise, and I cannot wait to show you what I've been working on. All right, the title of my capstone is Art Education and Integration, Learning to Look. The purpose of this is to enhance creativity and critical thinking through inquiry into art criticism and the art-making process, to show the necessity and validity of fine arts programs, specifically in underserved schools. A little bit of background. I teach at a small school in the agricultural town of Maysville, Georgia, which has a poverty rate of 16.34%, with 43% of its elementary students qualifying as economically disadvantaged. We are at almost max capacity, free reduced lunch. I've also included the demographics down below for you. But I wanted to share this with you that I am in my third year teaching at this school. I essentially started the art program. There was no established art classes before this. My first year there, we had no budget. This just puts into perspective that it is an underserved rural school where I really wanted to focus on student buy-in and how I can build a relationship that is attainable and reachable for my students to get involved in the art world. This branches right into guided looking. Last year, I took a class at the High Museum of Art in Atlanta called Guided Looking. It was all about really just teaching the students to look. Teaching students to look is a skill that is nurtured through a visual arts education. Critically observing is a skill that enables learners to observe, assess, and impart deeper and more meaningful connections to what they are doing. And this doesn't just apply in the art room. This can apply in other classroom settings or even in real-world environments where the students grow throughout their entire life. These are skills that can stick with them to help them be more developed learners. Observing art without discussing it with students only provides a surface-level introduction into artwork. There needs to be more. You wouldn't just invite your students into your art room, project some historical artworks, and say, have at it, not giving any context or any background or any structure. Participating in a guided looking activity really allows the educator to be the thought provoker, while the students are the scholars. For example, let's do our own guided looking activity together. We are focusing on Alma Sewing by Frances Hyman Criss, which is an oil on canvas painting that was done in 1935. Take a couple seconds and just observe naturally. See where your eyes go as you look at the picture and what you notice. What stands out to you? What seems important? After giving your students ample time to observe the artwork, start as a whole group with the question, what are the first things that you are drawn to within this work? This simple question creates an accessible entry point for students to begin looking at the artwork. Once one student starts, other students will begin to make deeper and deeper inferences, feeding off of their classmates' ideas. It's obvious that Alma is the central character, sitting at her sewing machine, sewing. With this guided looking activity, one student might begin by noticing the metal rectangle on Alma's neck. This might then give another student the opportunity to notice the odd paper doll on the wall, which then might lead another student to notice the reflection of the man in the lamp. This is actually a great opportunity for the facilitator of the guided looking activity to step in, the art educator of the classroom, and let the class know that that is actually the artist, Frances Hyman Criss, his own self-portrait. This might then lead to more questions from the class. For example, where does Alma work? Why is the fabric painted in such a cubist manner? Why did the artist choose to put himself in this painting with just a seamstress? This creates an opportunity for students to build a relationship with an artwork. Not only are they looking at the artwork that you want them to see, coming to the conclusions that you want them to come to, they're coming to these conclusions on their own with their classmates. This is more engaging and more personal for the students. This helps them develop a deeper relationship and infer deeper meaning into what they're learning. When students look closely at an artwork under the guidance of an art expert, the more involved students will become in critically deconstructing the meaning from the artwork on their own. Students create personal interpretations through exploration and dialogue with their classmates. They develop critical thinking skills that carry over not only into the art room and other aspects of the school, but to other aspects of their life and their cognitive development. Guided looking follows right along with an observational critique. Essentially, students use the Feldman method, which most of my lessons have a summative assessment that is a critique involving the Feldman method at the end. And this method just focuses on the 4 pillars of description, analysis, interpretation, and judgment. It's based on the premise that if the observer slows down and critically looks at a work of art, then the meaning will be revealed, which is essentially the activity of guided looking. We also use a paint palette critique in our art room. It is just a great opportunity for students to see a more visual critique than essentially just a conversation. The students get ample time to observe the artwork of their classmates, and then they are given the paint palette critique worksheet to fill out. And it is really just a glows and grows activity where you have a chance to discuss with the group and reflect on your own artwork 2 things that were successful and showed good craftsmanship, and then 1 thing that could be improved upon. And this really helps the students to develop their art language, which can then help them have even more meaningful critiques of artwork. Art education benefits is a topic that is really close to my heart. My experience teaching kindergarten through 5th grade in a rural, low socioeconomic area has really helped me to develop a vast understanding of the influential impact fine arts programs have on all components of a school, not just, within the art room. But let's focus specifically on the question, how can the arts specifically impact students from diverse backgrounds? The research is there to support the benefits of art education, specifically with students with diverse backgrounds. The National Assessment of Educational Progress, or the NAEP, speculated that many students, especially those at risk, stay in school because of the arts. Students with low socioeconomic status, who were most at risk for academic failure, were the largest group of students to participate in arts education within their school. This correlates with Hawkins' 2012 findings, which noted that the College Board saw a 91-point higher average SAT score in those students that were involved in 4 years of studying the arts. To continue, the Chicago Arts Partnership in Education, or CAPE, public schools took their local teachers and had the unprecedented idea to pair them up with local artists in the area. The ultimate goal of this was to create a coinciding synergistic relationship where the local teachers and the local artists could develop curriculum units together that not only covered the required academic subjects and standards, but also integrated hands-on art techniques and studio habits. Compared with other Chicago public elementary schools that lacked an arts integrated program, the Cape schools that had these local teachers working with local artists to develop curriculum had higher performances on standardized tests with more information retention. Cross-curricular arts integration has absolutely helped with student buy-in within my school. Not only has it helped to legitimize my art program with my students, it has also helped to legitimize my art program with my administration and my other staff members. It has improved my overall school climate, as well as provided the opportunity to bridge the gap between general education and specialized areas like fine arts. If teaching at its best is an art, then instructional leadership of teaching done best must also be based in art. As stated earlier, art education positively impacts other curriculum areas in education. These areas include reading and language arts skills, mathematics, social skills, as well as the areas of motivation to learn, a positive school environment, and most importantly, thinking skills. To continue with solid research, the NAEP tested students' performance in the arts and other academic areas, including math, reading, science, writing, history, civics, and geography, in a 2019 assessment. The Annenberg Institute then took that information and evaluated these scores to conclude that there is, in fact, a positive relationship between schools that impart high-quality arts education and an academic achievement using these growth scores. Education is constantly evolving, and with that, the educator must evolve as well. Not only is it difficult enough to cover the necessary standards and make sure that your students are understanding and retaining the information, we have to worry about student engagement, making sure that our students are interested in what we're learning, and let alone go the extra mile to make sure that our students are having fun with each lesson. Arts-based instructional approaches can provide that enrichment that students need to comprehend necessary general education curriculum, but can also create a more whole, inquisitive, hands-on, engaging experience for all levels of learners. Using an arts-based instructional approach expands upon a student's self-confidence, improved cognition, communication, as well as deepening cultural and self-understanding. Arts-based instructional approaches are a great opportunity for a general education classroom to transform itself through new ways of teaching to best suit all learners. I would like to start off by examining a lesson called Ghosts in the House. This lesson is based on the book Ghosts in the House by author and illustrator Kazuna Kawara. This lesson is an excellent example of an arts-based cross-curricular lesson that any teacher can take, modify, and implement in their classroom to best fit their needs. Not only does this lesson tie in language arts and reading, but we use our guided looking skills to examine the illustrations in the book. We start off reading the book Ghosts in the House as a whole group, and then each student is given a worksheet. The first question on this worksheet simply says, what are some descriptive words that you think of when you think about a haunted house? For example, is a haunted house pretty? Is the lawn green and well manicured? Does it have bright paint? Or is it creaky and old, dilapidated, and faded? This is great because they can answer that question using their language arts, writing, and reading skills. And then the second question asks them to take all those descriptive words and make a visual. It asks them to use all of that and draw the house that they just described, seamlessly tying in all curriculums. Now, this is a great printmaking and collage lesson. It follows along with the unique illustrations in the book. The author and illustrator decided to only use 3 colors throughout this whole book. And it's interesting to see the students' responses as they try to uncover how the author and illustrator went about creating these illustrations. We then examine printmaking and collage techniques to create our own Ghosts in the House haunted house. Students can use a template if they need a little bit of extra assistance to modify the lesson, or they can challenge themselves, as you can see in some of these examples, and come up with their very own haunted house. This also focuses on the element and principle of art, contrast, and color. This ancient Greek-based lesson is another example of a cross-curricular arts-based lesson that any teacher can take, modify, and implement in their classroom to best fit their curricular needs. This lesson in the art room uses Greek mythology and art history to ultimately create a Greek vase that includes a student's personal narrative and theme that relates to them, thus making something art historical, attainable, and modern. Students had the opportunity to examine historical vessels and use their guided looking skills to uncover what their illustrations were about, what the overall theme was, and what the purpose of the vessel was. After that, they were then tasked with the chance to come up with their own memory, personal narrative, or theme that they wanted to create their own ancient Greek vase with. As you can see, there's a Monsters, Inc. example that uses our Principle of Design pattern to match the theme. They use the door, the Monsters, Inc. logo, the scales, the sock, as well as this memory vessel that one of my students made that shows a day where she got to ride horses with her family, and she then created a pattern of trees in some classical line pattern. The elements and principles of art can provide a basic framework for art curriculum in underserved schools. When developing an art curriculum for disadvantaged schools, it's imperative to examine the hierarchy of needs within a basic art program. Utilizing the elements and principles of art, which are shape, color, space, line, form, texture, and value, as well as contrast, movement, pattern, balance, emphasis, unity, and rhythm. Utilizing these in lessons creates a strong foundation with accessible points of entry that students can use to grow as successful artists and intellectuals. Introducing and building upon this core knowledge, students learn observation, questioning, and application skills that they can then take with them as they grow. At their core, the lessons within this curriculum are built upon the art elements and principles. An example of this is the God's Eye weaving lesson. This lesson is based around Mexican culture and ojos de Dios, or God's Eye weavings. This uses accessible and recyclable materials that my students have access to, and it also incorporates a digital lesson on YouTube. I have recorded myself doing this entire lesson so that even my students who were digital this year can follow along with us at home. And again, they will have these materials available at their house. In the video, I discuss how to make yarn out of old t-shirts and grocery bags, how to collect sticks from the yard and make the base for the God's Eye weaving. It also focuses on the element and principle of art, color, and unity. One of my very favorite lessons that I've done with my students is the Dale Chihuly water bottle sculpture. This is a 3D sculptural lesson with an introduction into glass blowing and the art of Dale Chihuly. This lesson uses entirely accessible and recyclable materials, same as the God's Eye weaving. And the best part of this entire lesson is that it is a collaborative art lesson. My students work together to paint these water bottles, cut these water bottles, and string them up together as an entire school. This is also a community art project in the sense that my students get to take these collaborative sculptures home with them. Each student gets a little one. We also make larger ones to display in the community and throughout our school, ultimately improving and contributing to school climate and buy-in with administration, staff, and students. The All About Me collage is an introduction into collage. This is a visual reminder that we do before we start our self-portrait lesson. This also uses accessible materials, magazines, and newspapers that my students get to go through to make a collage that is all about them. It examines meaningful traits and positive characteristics about them that they can then refer to when they move on to their self-portrait for their background. And finally, to conclude my curriculum is a self-portrait unit. This is an introduction into self-portraits. We begin by examining endless examples of modern and historical self-portraits. Anywhere from Vincent van Gogh to Henri Matisse to Jean-Michel Basquiat to Kehinde Wiley. This is an opportunity for students to use observational practice and implement their guided looking skills that we have been practicing. When students examine all of these various types of self-portraits, they can begin to see self-portraits that they feel they are represented in. This encourages student success in differentiation through representation. Students are also given helpful examples of all different types of hair textures, facial features, etc., so that they can refer to that as a guide if they get stuck. We also use symbols to communicate meaning with our backgrounds. For example, one of my girls really is interested in nature and plants. She has included those in her background as well as in her headband. My other student is a boy that is incredibly interested in sports, as you can tell. This concludes my capstone presentation. Again, I want to thank each and every one of you for being part of my capstone committee and reviewing this entire presentation. I look forward to hearing from you at my capstone defense.